At 17:31 hours on November 4th, 1944, Squadron leader Brance Burbridge climbed into the cockpit of his de Havilland Mosquito at RAF Swanington as invisible German radar beams swept the night sky over occupied Europe. He was 23 years old, 8 months into combat, 47 operational sorties flown, and already one of Bomber Command's most dangerous hunters. Beside him, Flight Lieutenant Bill Skelton settled into the navigator's seat, his hands moving instinctively across the radar console. The glow from the scope painted his face in pale green light. What he saw made him pause, then lean closer. Multiple contacts. Not the scattered, fleeting signals they'd grown used to, but a dense cluster of emissions spreading across the screen. Bomber Command had lost 217 heavy bombers in October alone. Lancasters and Halifaxes burned across the German night sky, victims of a quiet, lethal threat that struck from below. German night fighters had learned to slip undetected beneath bomber formations, positioning themselves directly under the blind spot. Then they fired upward-mounted cannons, Serrate music, tearing into fuel tanks and bomb bays. The bomber crews never saw their killers. Many never even knew they were under attack. During the Battle of Berlin, Bomber Command lost 574 aircraft, most to night fighters. The men at Swanington knew the numbers. They watched mosquitoes roll down the runway every evening. They watched the sky swallow them whole. And some nights, they watched the empty dispersals at dawn, knowing who wouldn't be coming back. That was why Number 100 Group existed. 7 squadrons of Mosquito night fighters, equipped not to chase bombers, but to hunt the hunters. Their task was simple in theory and deadly in execution. Detect German night fighters by their own radar emissions, slip in behind them unseen, and destroy them before they reached the bomber stream. Since December 1943, 100 Group had claimed 257 German aircraft destroyed. The cost had been high. 70 Mosquitoes lost. Crews vanished without wreckage, without witnesses, without answers. Burbridge started the Merlin engines. The wooden airframe shuddered as power surged through the aircraft. He joined 85 Squadron in July 1943 after a year as an instructor. His first tour had been unremarkable, one probable, one damaged. Then he was paired with Skelton. Everything changed. Skelton had mastered a strange, improvised device known as Serrate, a passive radar detector built to do something radical: listen instead of transmit. It picked up emissions from German Liechtenstein radar sets at ranges up to 80 miles, turning the Luftwaffe's greatest advantage into a beacon that betrayed them in the dark. Their first kill came in February, a Messerschmitt 410 over the Channel. By April, Burbridge had 5 victories. By October, 14. Tonight, they were flying a high-level intruder patrol southeast of Cologne. The briefing had been blunt. Bomber Command was hitting Bochum. German night fighters would scramble from bases along the Ruhr, Bonn-Handler, Gütersloh, Cologne 1. And when they did, Mosquitoes would already be waiting. The Mosquito lifted off at 17:31. They crossed the English coast low, just 1,800 feet, then climbed hard over Belgium to 15,000. Skelton watched his instruments. The AI Mark X scanned ahead. Serrate listened. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, German night fighters were taking off, veterans with dozens of kills, men who had spent years stalking bomber streams. They had altitude. They had numbers. They had experience. But tonight, for the first time, they were being hunted. At 19:04 hours, Serrate spoke. Contact. For miles. Starboard to port. Burbridge turned smoothly into pursuit. Serrate gave bearing, not range. Skelton read signal strength, calling corrections by instinct and experience. Left 2 degrees, steady, signal strengthening. At 1,500 feet, Burbridge caught the silhouette, dark against darker sky. Binoculars confirmed it. A Junkers 88. 3 crew. Pilot, radar operator, rear gunner. For 20mm cannons. Machine guns. And possibly upward-firing Serrate music already primed for a kill. The German aircraft was hunting. Its Liechtenstein SN-2 radar swept the night sky ahead, searching for bomber echoes, unaware that its own transmissions had just signed its death warrant. The German crew had no idea the Mosquito was there. Their radar scanned forward, not behind. Liechtenstein sets were designed to find bombers, not predators slipping silently onto their tail. The Luftwaffe had learned about Serrate as early as September 1943, when RAF intruder squadrons began appearing deep over Germany. Warnings went out. Orders followed. Night fighter crews were told to limit radar use whenever possible. But with bomber streams filling the sky, they had no choice. Without radar, they were blind. Burbridge closed to 1,000 feet. The Junkers 88 held steady, flying west, unaware, still hunting. Skelton watched the Serrate signal fluctuate, strong enough to track, weak enough to suggest the German crew was using short radar sweeps, conserving emissions, trying not to advertise themselves. Burbridge armed the 4 Hispano Mk2 cannons mounted beneath the Mosquito's belly. Each carried 175 rounds. 700 rounds total, but ammunition discipline mattered. Long bursts wasted shells and attracted attention. Short, precise bursts were doctrine. At 800 feet, the Junkers began a gentle turn. Adjusting, Skelton said calmly. Burbridge matched it perfectly. The German pilot was flying instructions from ground control, positioning early along a patrol line. Bomber Command's main force was still 20 minutes from the target. This was the quiet phase, setting the trap. For 100 feet. Through the gun sight, Burbridge could see the aircraft clearly now. Black crosses on the fuselage. Exhaust stubs glowing faint red against the darkness. He centered the sight on the port engine. His rule had never changed. Engines, not cockpit. Disable the machine. Give the crew a chance. Skelton knew it. They had discussed it once, early on. Both were Christians. Both understood the job. Stop the killing machine, without unnecessary killing. The Junkers maintained course. Burbridge's finger tightened on the trigger. Then Skelton's voice cut in sharply. New contact. 2 miles. Crossing left to right. Same altitude. Too close. Another German night fighter was hunting the same airspace. The empty sky had become crowded in seconds. Burbridge made the decision instantly. First target first. He pressed the trigger. 4 Hispano cannons erupted together. Tracers arced forward in a tight stream. The burst lasted 3 seconds. No more, no less. Shells tore into the Junker's port engine. Fire erupted immediately, orange flames streaming backward along the wing route. The German aircraft rolled hard right and dropped into a dive. Burbridge pulled up sharply to avoid debris. Confirmed, Skelton said. Time, 1906. The Junkers vanished below 3,000 feet, trailing fire. They didn't see it hit the ground, but German records later confirmed a Ju-88G from Nackjagerschwader 1 crashed in the patrol area that night. The pilot bailed out. The radar operator and rear gunner were killed. There was no time to dwell on it. The second contact was closing. Skelton called bearings. The Serrate signal was weak, intermittent, an experienced crew, limiting emissions, switching the radar on only briefly between sweeps. The Luftwaffe had adapted. Some crews ran silent until the last moment. At 1914, the signal strengthened. 800 yards. Dead ahead. Burbridge eased the throttles forward. The Merlin engines responded instantly. Airspeed climbed to 280 knots. Within 3 minutes, they had visual. Another Junkers 88. Different variant. Longer SN, 2 radar aerials projecting from the nose, newer production. The aircraft flew straight and level, showing no sign it had detected pursuit. Burbridge settled in behind it, 600 feet back, slightly low, below the standard approach, reducing the chance of being silhouetted. Skelton scanned for additional contacts. The sky was momentarily clear, but something felt wrong. The Junkers was heading south, toward Bonhandler. 15 miles ahead lay one of the largest night fighter bases in the region. More than 40 German fighters operated from that field. If they pressed the attack too close, the night could turn against them in seconds. Burbridge held position. One more decision. One more chance. And very little time. Burbridge closed to 400 feet. This time he placed the sight on the starboard engine. Variation mattered. Predictability got pilots killed. German crews who survived learned patterns. Burbridge refused to give them one. He fired. A 3-second burst. 50 rounds per cannon. 200 shells hammered into the engine nacelle and wing root. Metal tore apart. Fuel ignited instantly. The entire starboard wing erupted in flame. The Junkers pitched nose down, rolling violently left. The pilot fought the controls, but physics had already made the decision. Secondary explosions rippled through the fuselage. At 1917, The aircraft inverted completely, and Dove. Skelton tracked it all the way down. Impact, he said calmly. The Junkers crashed into open farmland east of their position. No parachutes. No survivors. 2 German night fighters destroyed in 11 minutes. Burbridge checked ammunition. He had fired roughly 150 rounds. 550 remained. Then Skelton spoke again, this time without calm. Multiple contacts. 3 to 5 miles. Different bearings. All converging. Bonhandler. At 1923, they reached the airspace southeast of Cologne. Below them, scattered lights marked the night fighter base. Skelton counted at least 6 distinct radar contacts within 3 miles, all circling the same point. The Germans were stacking. Standard procedure. Night fighters orbited a control point, waiting for ground controllers to vector them toward incoming bomber streams. Each aircraft held altitude separation, 500 feet apart, to prevent collisions. Burbridge reduced power and descended to 14,000 feet. The orbital pattern was clear now. Clockwise rotation, roughly 2 miles in diameter. Then he made a decision that would have seemed suicidal to most pilots. He joined the pattern. The Mosquito slipped cleanly into the orbit between 2 contacts. Skelton monitored spacing carefully. 1,500 feet ahead, he said. Contact behind at 1,800. They were flying in formation with the enemy. The Germans had no visual reference. No way to distinguish friend from foe in absolute darkness. Their radar scanned outward for bombers, not sideways for aircraft flying beside them. For 90 seconds, the Mosquito orbited with the hunters. Skelton's screen showed the formation growing. 7 contacts. Then 8. The Luftwaffe was massing for the intercept. Somewhere west, RAF bomber streams were approaching their turning point. Within 30 minutes, these fighters would peel off and slaughter bombers, unless they never got the chance. Burbridge selected the contact ahead of them. He added power slightly, closing the distance without disrupting the formation. Everyone in the orbit flew roughly the same speed, 230 knots. Any sudden acceleration would stand out. Smooth. Gradual. At 1928, Burbridge gained visual. Messerschmitt Bf-110. Twin engine, heavier than the Junkers. A dedicated night fighter, no bombs, all guns. 4 forward-firing cannons, upward-firing Schrage-Musik, a rear defensive gun. Crew of 3. Since 1940, it had been the Luftwaffe's primary night interceptor. Experienced pilots preferred it. Stable. Deadly. That made it dangerous. Burbridge closed to 500 feet. The Bf-110 held its place in the orbit, spacing perfect, flying with confidence. This crew knew exactly what they were doing. At 400 feet, the aircraft filled his gun sight. Twin tail booms. Glazed nose. Exhaust stacks glowing dull red. He aimed for the port engine. 3-second burst. The Hispano cannons hammered. Tracers streaked forward. Hits were immediate. The port engine exploded, fuel spraying across the wing and igniting in a sheet of flame. The Messerschmitt rolled violently left and dropped out of the formation. Burbridge pulled up and right, slipping clear of the orbit. The burning fighter spiraled down and impacted at 1930. German records later confirmed it. A Bf-110 from 2. Staffel, Jagdgeschwader 1, crashed near Bonhandler. The pilot was killed. 2 crewmen bailed out. 3 German night fighters destroyed in 27 minutes. But the pattern was breaking now. Skelton's screen lit up with movement. They know, he said. The hunt had just turned into a fight. The sky began to break apart. German fighters scattered in every direction as ground control transmissions flooded the airwaves. Warnings. Alerts. An intruder among them. The element of surprise was gone. And Burbridge and Skelton were still deep over enemy territory, surrounded by hostile aircraft. 1 contact wasn't running. 1 contact was turning toward them. Contact, Skelton said. Range 1,200 yards. Closing fast. Bearing 090. The German pilot had seen the explosion, had caught the Mosquito's silhouette against the burning wreckage. And now he was coming to investigate, or to kill. At night, 1,200 yards was close. Too close. Burbridge didn't run. He turned hard into the contact. The Mosquito banked 60 degrees, engines biting into the cold air. If the German expected them to flee, this would shatter that assumption. Night fighting wasn't about reflex. It was geometry, angles, closure rates, energy. The pilot who controlled the merge controlled the fight. At 800 yards, Skelton got a solid radar return. Confirmed. Junkers 88. Another one. Fourth type of the night. Likely a G model. Newer radar, heavier armament, better trained crews. These aircraft were becoming harder to surprise. The Luftwaffe was learning. 600 yards. Both aircraft were converging. Combined closure rate over 400 knots. Burbridge had seconds. Break off and give the German control, or commit to a head-on pass where both aircraft would be exposed. He held course. At 400 yards, the Junkers opened fire. Tracer rounds arced past the Mosquito's port wing, close enough for Burbridge to feel the instinctive flinch he suppressed. 300 yards. 200. The Junkers filled the gun sight. Burbridge fired. All four Hispano cannons erupted at once. A full 5-second burst. Everything he had left in one concentrated stream. The shells tore into the Junker's nose and cockpit. The glazed forward section disintegrated. The left engine caught fire, then the right. Flames poured back along the wings. The German aircraft pitched up violently, rolled inverted, and fell away burning. Impact at 1940. German records later confirmed it. A Ju-88G from 9. Staffel, Jagdgeschwader 1, crashed near the Rhine. No survivors. 4 German night fighters destroyed in 37 minutes. Burbridge checked ammunition. Roughly 400 rounds expended. 300 remained, but spread thin across magazines. Not enough for another sustained engagement. Skelton scanned his scopes. Clear for now. The remaining German fighters had scattered after the warnings. Some were landing. Others were repositioning. The carefully stacked formation over Bonhandler was gone. For the moment, the threat had eased. But fuel was becoming a concern. They had been airborne over 2 hours. The Mosquito carried enough for roughly 4, but operating deep over Germany demanded margin. Burbridge turned northwest. Home. Behind them, for German night fighters burned on German soil. For crews that would never reach the bomber stream. For aircraft that would never kill another Lancaster crew. The arithmetic was brutal and necessary. As they crossed back over Belgium, Skelton began compiling the combat report. Times, bearings, aircraft types, ammunition expended. It was 1952. They should be back at Swanington by 2100 hours if the weather held. But something nagged at him. The detector flickered. Weak signals behind them. Intermittent. Fading in and out. Could be friendly. Could be enemy. At this range, over 2 miles, identification was uncertain. They were tired. Low on ammunition. Heading home. The sensible choice was to ignore it. But the signal strengthened. Contacts tightening, Skelton said. Under 2 miles. Matching our turn. That wasn't coincidence. Burbridge didn't hesitate. He reduced altitude to 12,000 feet and descended straight into cloud. The Mosquito vanished into gray darkness. No horizon. No visual reference. Just instruments and trust. If the contact was using radar, the clouds wouldn't save them. But for the moment, they were blind together. And the hunt wasn't over yet. If the pursuit had been visual, the clouds had saved them. For 3 minutes, the Mosquito flew blind inside gray nothingness. No horizon. No stars. Just instruments and trust. Skelton watched the scopes. The signal weakened. Range opening. Then it vanished. Contact lost, he said quietly. Whoever had been behind them had either broken off or never reacquired them at all. Burbridge held course another 30 seconds, then eased the Mosquito back up to 13,000 feet. They emerged above the cloud layer into cold, clear air. Stars burned overhead. The black quilt of Europe slid silently beneath them. The Dutch coast lay 40 miles ahead. At 20:08, they crossed the enemy shoreline. Flak batteries near Imoyden opened fire almost immediately. Black bursts blossomed below them, while short. The Mosquito was too high, too fast. The gunners never adjusted in time. They were over the North Sea now. Friendly water. 20 minutes to safety. Skelton ran a full systems check. Fuel, 200 gallons, enough for another hour. Hydraulics normal. Oil pressure steady. No damage anywhere. The aircraft had performed flawlessly. For engagements. For kills. Not a single hit taken. That was the Mosquito's advantage. Speed, agility, and a wooden airframe that could do what no heavy fighter could. Tonight, they had used every ounce of it. Burbridge's hands were steady on the controls, but his mind wasn't quiet. 4 German night fighters in 37 minutes. Most crews were lucky to score one victory in an entire tour. Some never scored at all. They had destroyed 4 in a single sortie. The tactical implications were obvious. For the squadron, for 100 Group, for Bomber Command itself. But there was also the cost. For enemy crews dead, families who would receive telegrams. Burbridge had aimed for engines wherever possible, had given crews a chance. But the 4th kill had been different. Head on. No alternatives. That was the reality. Stop the machine. Save the bombers. At 2021, the English coast appeared ahead. RAF Swanington lay 15 miles inland. Skelton keyed the radio. Mosquito returning. For victories claimed. Request landing. The tower responded instantly. Cleared straight in. Runway 27. Wind light. Weather clear. The airfield lights came into view at 2028. Burbridge entered the circuit, reduced power, lowered flaps. Landing gear down. 3 green lights confirmed. Touchdown at 2032. Smooth. Controlled. Perfect. They rolled clear and taxied to dispersal. Ground crews were already waiting. They always were. Counting aircraft out. Counting them back. Tonight, one Mosquito returned with news no one expected. The engines shut down. Silence settled in. The crew chief approached, eyes searching the aircraft for damage. 4, Skelton said simply. The word spread instantly across the hardstand. For kills. 1 crew. 1 sortie. Burbridge and Skelton climbed out and began their initial reports. Times, bearings, aircraft types, ammunition expended. Intelligence would debrief them fully the next day. German records would confirm it later. But even now, the claim stood. 3 Junkers 88s destroyed. 1 Bf 110 destroyed. Other Mosquitoes from 100 Group had scored that night. 3 enemy aircraft total across all squadrons. Burbridge and Skelton alone had accounted for 4. What they didn't know was that this mission would change doctrine. By the morning of November 5th, the report reached Bomber Command Headquarters. Air Chief Marshal Arthur Harris reviewed it personally. For confirmed kills. 1 crew. 1 sortie. Average ammunition expenditure, 200 rounds per kill. Efficient. Lethal. Repeatable. More importantly, the tactic worked. Serrate-equipped Mosquitoes could hunt German night fighters inside their own airspace, disrupting them before they ever reached the bomber streams. Within a week, 100 Group revised its training protocols. Burbridge and Skelton were ordered to brief other crews. How to slip into enemy formations undetected. How to read orbital patterns. When to fire. When not to. How to conserve ammunition. How to escape. Infiltrating enemy night fighter orbits became doctrine. The impact showed immediately. Bomber Command losses fell from 217 aircraft in October to 152 in November. German night fighter effectiveness dropped by 28%. 100 Group claimed 63 enemy aircraft destroyed that month. Burbridge and Skelton accounted for 7 of them. By the end of November, their total stood at 17. The Germans noticed. Luftwaffe High Command issued new directives. Night fighters were ordered to reduce radar use to a minimum. Some crews refused, knowing it meant flying blind. Others complied, and their kill rates collapsed. Serrate had created a dilemma with no solution. Use radar and be hunted. Or don't, and miss the bombers entirely. By December, the Germans had a name for it. Mosquito terror. German night fighter pilots began reporting a new fear. Not over the target. Not during interception. But on the way home. Landing was the most dangerous moment of the mission. Gear down, flaps extended, slow, heavy, and nearly blind. And now Mosquito intruders were waiting. Orbiting airfields in the dark. Listening. Watching. When exhausted German crews returned from patrols, the hunters struck. Burbridge and Skelton kept flying through December. On December 12th, they destroyed a Bf-110 and a Ju-88 near Essen. On December 23rd, another Bf-110 fell near Koblenz. By the end of the year, their total stood at 20 victories, one more than Group Captain John "Cat's Eyes" Cunningham, the legendary RAF night fighter ace and Burbridge's former squadron commander. Then came January 2nd, 1945, their final mission. Bomber Command was attacking oil refineries southwest of Ludwigshafen. Burbridge and Skelton flew escort. At 22:15, Skelton called the contact. For miles. Closing. Visual confirmed. Ju-88. The approach was textbook. For 100 feet. Stable closure. Burbridge fired a 3-second burst. The port engine erupted in flame. The aircraft rolled, dived, and disappeared into the darkness. No survivors. Victory number 21. The highest-scoring British and Commonwealth night fighter partnership of the war. Air Vice Marshal Edward Addison, commander of No. 100 Group, sent personal congratulations. Both men received the Distinguished Service Order, with a bar added. But the real achievement wasn't medals. It was mathematics. 21 German night fighters destroyed meant 21 crews that never reached the bomber streams. German night fighter crews averaged 6 bomber kills per year. Simple arithmetic. Burbridge and Skelton had likely saved 126 bombers. 1,260 aircrew. The invisible hunter had become real, and the Germans believed it because the proof was burning across their airfields every night. In March 1945, Burbridge left No. 85 Squadron and was posted as commanding officer of the Night Fighter Leaders School. The war in Europe still had 2 months to run, but his combat tour was over. Skelton remained briefly before his own posting. Their partnership had lasted 13 months. 21 victories, 0 losses. After Germany surrendered, both men made the same decision. They left the RAF. They studied theology. Burbridge went to Oxford, first history, then theology. Skelton went to Trinity Hall, Cambridge. They had spent the war confronting death. Now they wanted to speak about life. Burbridge joined Scripture Union in 1948, devoting decades to youth ministry, schools, camps, sixth form courses. He rarely spoke about the war. When asked, he said only one thing. I aimed for engines, not cockpits. I wanted to stop the machine, not kill the men. His logbook stayed in a drawer. His medals stayed in a box. Skelton was ordained as an Anglican priest, became chaplain at Clare College, Cambridge, and later rector of Market Harborough. His sermons spoke of reconciliation and forgiveness. His wartime record was almost never mentioned. No. 100 Group disbanded on December 17, 1945, but its legacy endured. Electronic warfare tactics developed by the group became standard doctrine worldwide: radar detection, emissions tracking, electronic countermeasures. Night fighting was never the same again. The Mosquito served with the RAF until 1951, longer elsewhere. Its legacy wasn't longevity. It was versatility. Bomber, fighter, reconnaissance, intruder, a wooden aircraft that outperformed metal rivals. A gamble that worked. Burbridge and Skelton remained friends until Skelton's death in 2003. When they met, they talked about theology, family, life. Rarely about November 4, 1944. That night belonged to history. To Bomber Command. To the 1,260 airmen who came home because 21 German night fighters did not. Brance Burbridge died on November 1, 2016, at age 95. By then, his medals had been sold to pay for care. His family needed the money. The nation had moved on. But the record remained. 21 victories. The highest-scoring British night fighter ace of the war. The invisible hunter. Real only when German aircraft burned in the darkness.